The Galactic University's Xenobiology department had seen many strange things over the centuries, but Professor Zexthanor had outdone himself this time. The Velthari academic stood proudly beside what could only be described as a nightmare, given flesh, a terror-hound from the death world of Krixmar. Magnificent, isn't it? Zexthanor clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as the creature paced within its reinforced containment field. The beast stood nearly 3 meters tall, its obsidian hide rippling with corded muscle. 6 eyes burned like crimson stars above rows of serrated teeth, and its claws could rend through titanium like paper. The apex predator of one of the galaxy's most hostile worlds, absolutely untamable according to every xenobiological study. James Rodriguez, the newest addition to the department's research team, nodded politely while his colleague Gull shifted nervously beside him. The Xanthari female's gill slits fluttered with anxiety as she watched the Terror-Hound prowl back and forth, its low growl reverberating through the laboratory. "It's certainly impressive," James said diplomatically. "How long have you had it?" 3 standard months, Zexthanor replied, his chest swelling with pride. "I'm the first researcher to successfully contain a live specimen. The applications for military and security purposes are endless. Imagine squadrons of these creatures serving the Galactic Alliance." The Terror-Hound suddenly stopped pacing and fixed all 6 of its burning eyes on James. The growling intensified, becoming a bone-deep rumble that made the laboratory equipment vibrate. Gull took several steps backward, her scales shifting to a pale blue of fear. "It seems particularly attentive to you, James," she whispered. Professor Zexthanor's mandibles clicked rapidly in excitement. "Fascinating. It must sense something different about humans. Your species does have that peculiar neural pattern we've never quite understood." James studied the creature with calm, curiosity rather than fear. The Terror-Hound pressed against the containment field, its massive form looming over him. But something in its posture, in the way it tilted its head, reminded him of something familiar. "Professor," James said slowly, "when was the last time this creature had any form of social interaction?" "Social interaction?" Zexthanor's translator struggled with the concept. "It's a Terror-Hound, not a domestic companion. These beasts know only violence and predation. They're solitary hunters that—" "That's not what I asked," James interrupted gently. "When was the last time anyone actually interacted with it? Not studied it, not fed it through automated systems, but actually spent time with it?" The professor's mandibles stilled. "Never, of course, it would be suicidal. The containment field is the only thing standing between us and becoming its next meal." James looked at the Terror-Hound again. Its 6 eyes tracked his every movement, but there was something in that gaze that transcended mere predatory interest. Growing up on Earth's frontier colonies, James had worked with all manner of creatures, some domesticated, others wild, many considered dangerous by galactic standards. "What if you're wrong about its nature?" James asked. "Impossible," Zexthanor scoffed. "Centuries of research clearly indicate—" "Research conducted by people who never actually tried to communicate with one," James pointed out. "Professor, with respect, I'd like to try something." Gull's scales flickered rapidly between blue and silver. "James, no. That thing will kill you the moment the field comes down." "Maybe," James acknowledged. "But look at it. Really look at it. See how it moves? The way it positions itself, it's not showing aggression, it's showing interest." Before anyone could stop him, James stepped closer to the containment field. The Terror-Hound immediately focused all of its attention on him, the growling growing louder. But James had spent enough time around Earth's predators to recognize the difference between a warning growl and something else entirely. "You're lonely, aren't you?" he said softly. The growling faltered for just a moment. "James, step away from the containment field immediately," Professor Zexthanor commanded. But the human ignored him. Instead, James slowly raised his hand and placed it against the energy barrier. The Terror-Hound moved closer until only the shimmering field separated James's palm from its massive head. "Computer, Lower containment field to minimum safety threshold. James said calmly. James, no! Gull cried, but it was too late. The field thinned to a barely perceptible shimmer. The Terror-Hound could have struck in that instant, could have torn through the weakened barrier and ripped James apart. Instead, it did something that made Professor Zex Thanor's mandibles fall silent and Gull's gills flutter in amazement. It pressed its head against the barrier and whined. The sound was nothing like the fearsome roar everyone expected from a Terror-Hound. It was plaintive, almost sad. Lower the field completely, James said. Absolutely not, Zex Thanor shrieked. Computer, recognize emergency xenobiological protocol, James said firmly. Lower containment field on my authority as senior field researcher. The field disappeared entirely. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The Terror-Hound stood motionless, its 6 eyes locked on James, then moving with surprising gentleness for such a massive predator. It lowered its great head toward the human. James reached out slowly and began to scratch behind what he assumed were the creature's ears, a cluster of sensory organs just behind its skull ridge. The change was immediate and profound. The Terror-Hound's eyes half closed, and it began to make a sound that was unmistakably a purr. Not the growl of a monster, but the contented rumble of a creature receiving long-denied affection. Impossible, Professor Zex Thanor whispered. Not impossible, James said, continuing to scratch the Terror-Hound's massive head. Just misunderstood. These aren't mindless killing machines, Professor. They're intelligent social creatures that have been isolated and treated as monsters for so long that they forgot how to be anything else. The Terror-Hound leaned into James's touch, its purring growing louder. Gull approached cautiously, her scales shifting to a warm gold of wonder. How did you know? She asked. James smiled, thinking of his old dog Rex back on the frontier colony, where he grew up. Rex had been part wolf, part something else entirely, and everyone had said he was too dangerous to keep as a pet. But sometimes the most fearsome creatures just needed someone to see past their reputation to the lonely soul underneath. Sometimes, he said, as the Terror-Hound nuzzled against his shoulder like an enormous deadly puppy, the scariest monsters are just animals that nobody ever bothered to love. Professor Zex Thanor watched in stunned silence as his untamable Terror-Hound rolled over to let James scratch its belly, purring so loudly that the laboratory walls vibrated. Perhaps the IT professor thought there was more to these humans than the galaxy had realized.